Hey, Mike here. I just wanted to let you know that you can listen to Dark Poutine early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime. Welcome back to Dark Poutine. I am Mike Brown.
And this is Matthew and Steve.
Matthew and Steve, is he snoring away there again?
Nope, he's asleep, but he will by the end of the show.
Yeah, poor little guy. The bulldogs and snout, stub snout dogs have such troubles breathing and stuff.
And skin irritations.
Yep.
And I finally worked up the nerve to give him his quarterly injection last night.
Oh?
And of course, the needle part wasn't attached to the plunger part properly, so I took the needle in and pushed it, and it came apart, and it just went all over the place. I had to go to the vet and spend $300 on another vial of liquid.
Arg.
The views, information, and opinions expressed during the Dark Poutine podcast are solely those of the producer and do not necessarily represent those of Curious Cast, its affiliate, Global News, nor their parent company, Chorus Entertainment.
Dark Poutine is not for the faint of heart or squeamish. Listener discretion is strongly advised. We're not experts on the topics we present, nor are we journalists. We're two ordinary Canadians chatting about crime and the dark side of history. Let's get to it. Put on your toque, grab yourself a double and a Nanaimo bar. It's time to scarf down some Dark Poutine.
You are responsible for obtaining and maintaining at your own cost all equipment needed to listen to Dark Poutine. Dark Poutine can be addictive. Side effects may include, but not be limited to, pausing and questioning the system, elevated heart rate, pondering humanity, odd looks from colleagues as you laugh out loud at work, family members not into true crime worrying about you. Positive side effects may include some perspectives and opinions that you disagree with, as well as some wokeness and empathy. If you don't think Dark Poutine is for you, consult your doctor immediately.
In the previous episode, we explored the shocking murder of Tim Bosma and the subsequent trial that brought two killers to justice. However, their trail of violence did not end there. In this second installment of our three-part series, we delve into the tragic case of Laura Babcock, 23, whose July 2012 disappearance from Toronto was eventually attributed to Dellen Millard and Mark Smich. We'll learn a bit about Laura's life, and examine the circumstances surrounding her vanishing and the painstaking yet unsuccessful search efforts to uncover her remains. You'll hear disturbing details that emerged during the trial for her murder, shedding even more light on the twisted dynamics between Millard, Smich, and their unfortunate victim. This episode serves as a prelude to the final chapter where we'll explore the most shocking revelation of all, that Dellen Millard also killed his father, Wayne, for his money. This is Dark Poutine, episode 318, Shadows of Deception, Part 2, The Murder of Laura Babcock. Even before they had gone to trial for Tim Bosma's murder, Millard and Smich had been charged in 2014 with murdering Millard's ex-girlfriend Laura Babcock and Millard's father Wayne. The series of events leading to these charges began with Bosma's disappearance, which quickly escalated into a major police investigation named Project Capella. This operation involved coordinated efforts among police forces from Hamilton, Toronto, Brantford, and Waterloo.
You know, I think it's important that we tell Laura's story and eventually Wayne Millard's story. But I tell you, Mike, I'm going to be happy when we get to never say these guys' names again.
Yep.
They're a repugnant manifestation of criminality, I think is the best way of saying it. Right.
I didn't add it to the script anywhere because it just didn't make sense. But Dellen Millard is so repugnant. His dog's name is Pedo.
He's just he is an affront to everything that is decent.
Yeah.
He really is.
Yeah.
It's not very often. It's too often, but it's not very often. Like, this guy there's a special place in hell for this guy.
I think so too. As the investigations continued with all the charges before the courts, the authorities remained largely silent on the specifics, adhering to the constraints of ongoing legal proceedings. However, the police had confirmed that they were pursuing every lead to its logical conclusion, including that more details might emerge as the major case management system integrated the evidence collected. The complex web of alleged crimes associated with Millard and Smich highlighted a potentially dark and intricate criminal history unfolding as the legal process progressed. The trial for Laura Babcock's murder would be first before that of Wayne Millard's. In 2015, again before their trial in Tim Bosma's murder, it was determined by the courts that Millard and Smich were going directly to trial for killing Laura Babcock, skipping the usual preliminary hearings. So, who was Laura Babcock? Laura Heather Ann Babcock was born in Etobicoke, Ontario on February 12, 1989 at 11:26 a.m. to Linda and Clayton Babcock. Laura and her older brother Brent shared a close and supportive relationship. Brent was known to be protective of Laura, and they maintained a strong bond throughout her life. The Babcock family were self-described as science nerds, but maintained fun-loving, creative, and outgoing personalities. As a child, Laura enjoyed going on rides at Canada's Wonderland amusement park, blasting 1970s rock music in her room, and watching reality TV shows like Say Yes to the Dress. She played the flute in her high school marching band and worked part-time in a toy store, where she charmed customers, both kids and their parents, as she served them.
I loved Canada's Wonderland when I was a kid.
Yeah, I didn't get to go because I never went to Toronto when I was a kid.
Yeah, you're too far away from Ontario.
Yeah.
It was so much fun.
Yeah, I had a few friends who went, and they loved it. My friend Scott Seelig went when he was just a wee puckster, and he told me all about, Canada's Wonderland, and he went to a restaurant called Mr. Green Jeans.
Yeah, Mr. Green Jeans.
And he said the food there was huge.
Yeah, I've been to Mr. Green Jeans. I wonder if I went to Canada's Wonderland now, because, when you're younger, it would have seemed all so big and exciting. I wonder if I went now, I'd probably just be like, children.
Yeah, get me out of here. Laura Babcock graduated from the University of Toronto with a degree in English and drama and was searching for a permanent job and a place to live. She was an aspiring actress whom friends described as bubbly and fun-loving. Laura Babcock, 19 at the time, first encountered Dellen Millard, the good-looking, wealthy young heir to the Millard Air aviation business, at the Brunswick House pub in Toronto between late 2008 and early 2009. Millard, known for his affluence and the legacy of his family's company based in Waterloo, quickly connected with Laura. Over time, their relationship evolved from casual dating to a more complex dynamic. They eventually settled into a pattern where they were friends and engaged in an intermittent romantic relationship. This arrangement continued for several years, characterized by periods of closeness and distance, reflecting the often unstable nature of their connection. Laura Babcock met businessman Sean Lerner in 2010. They dated for about 18 months before breaking up around Christmas 2011. However, even after their breakup, Babcock and Lerner remained close friends. Laura was described as a social butterfly, but behind her big bright smile, she had struggled with significant mental health challenges from a young age. Her medical records show she had an intense fear of death since childhood and lived with extreme anxiety, depression, and borderline personality disorder. She had a history of self-harm with more than a dozen hospital visits recorded between August 2011 and April 2012. She took medication to manage her symptoms.
It's interesting how you started that description of her as social butterfly, big bright smile. And why is it so often that people even from my experience, not all the time, but the biggest, brightest, the most fun people, social people can also have these terribly deep lows.
Yep.
Right? And it's like there are these beautiful things that burn bright, but when you're burning bright, you're also burning, aren't you?
Yeah.
The whole Robin Williams suicide,
yeah.
I think that really put it into focus, not that he had these issues, right? But put it into focus. You know, we always think we know who's having a hard time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't.
No, we don't. In the last year of her life, Laura Babcock also began changing with her family. Laura was frustrated. She seemed to be agitated and couldn't sit still, her dad Clayton said. Asserting her independence, Laura struggled with the rules imposed on her by her parents. She hated that they expected her to be in at a certain time. Curfews, she thought, were for kids after all. Not long after her breakup with Sean Lerner in December 2011, Laura Babcock moved in with a new boyfriend named David Osterweel. However, that relationship turned violent and ended just a few months later when Laura went to the police and had Osterweel arrested for assault, theft, and the sexual assault of one of her friends stemming from an incident in February 2012. Since graduating from university, Laura Babcock had been struggling with her mental health issues becoming more severe as she saw different doctors seeking diagnosis and treatment. Just weeks before the incident with Osterweel, Laura had been caught shoplifting lipstick and harmed herself by banging her head against a wall when confronted. She left home with her tiny white Maltese dog Lacey and began bouncing around from house to house, crashing on friends' couches. She wasn't banished from the home, but you can't keep coming home around 2 or 3 in the morning, Clayton Babcock said. Laura Babcock and Dellen Millard had been with each other occasionally, continuing to see each other even while he was with Christina Nudga, his new girlfriend. Laura was described as the odd woman out in the love triangle. She still carried a torch for Dellen Millard, but the relationship was complicated. On February 26, 2012, Christina Nudga, knowing Laura Babcock's continued interest in Dellen Millard, texted her, "Happy birthday. A year ago today was the first time I slept with Dellen." Laura quickly replied, quote, "That's fine, I slept with him a couple of weeks ago," end quote. Nudga, feeling jealous, confronted Millard about the affair. By April 2012, text messages between Millard and Nudga, which were later used as evidence, showed Millard promising Nudga that he would, quote, remove Babcock from their lives. Millard wrote, quote, "First I'm going to hurt her, then I'll make her leave." In communications between the pair, Nudga expressed that Millard's plans made her feel really loved and all warm on the inside.
Oof, that's a pretty screwed up idea of what a healthy relationship. And if somebody being hurt makes you feel warm inside,
yeah,
you have major problems. You need to take a really good hard look at yourself.
No kidding.
Where do these people come from?
I don't know. I really don't know.
I just don't know any people like this.
I mean, I know some pretty screwed up people, but not like this. No.
Yeah, you know me, but I'm screwed up in a special way.
Well, yeah.
You're supposed to disagree with me.
No, I'm not disagreeing because it's the truth. Andrew Michalski, a close friend of Dellen Millard and acquaintance of Laura Babcock, later shared with investigators that he'd had a text conversation with Laura on April 17, 2012. Laura texted Andrew saying, "This is what I got from Dell," Millard's nickname. "I just looked at my cell." She then forwarded a message she'd received. It stated, quote, "It's unfortunate you got dealt a bad hand. I don't blame you for your disorder, but it's up to you to manage it," end quote. And, quote, "You are harmful to me, so don't try to contact me until you've made some huge leaps of self-discovery. As I said before, good luck with life," end quote. Following this, Laura commented, quote, "Dell's def's not a big fan of me. He told me he told Christina when he slept with me before. Erg, these people cause so much unwanted drama for me and bring me into it," end quote. Also in the months before her disappearance, Laura Babcock had started working as an escort to earn extra cash. Laura started using the name L. Ryan in her profile. She worked twice that month for an escort service called Last Minute Escorts, whose owner, Shlomo Abuhav, later reiterated that she wanted to be an actress. Several of Laura's clients later said that they did not sleep with her, but each gave her money. This included a film and television producer, Jeff Wilson, who let Laura stay at his home for 2 weeks. Sean Lerner later reflected on Laura's work as an escort. He said, quote, "The way she explained it to me, it was sort of men looking to have a pretty girl on their arm. She may have believed it. I was obviously not convinced that might be all there was to it," end quote.
Yeah, I probably agree with Sean here.
We're not saying that Laura Babcock was lying about that. What we're saying is that perhaps she was naive as to what the other people wanted from her. Laura's friend Megan Orr said that this new escort work brought a new strain to their friendship, although they remained in close contact. Megan told Laura to please just be safe. In her last phone call with Megan Orr, Laura mentioned plans regarding her living situation before disappearing, including crashing with a friend named Nate Drexler, and she also mentioned Jeff Wilson. Laura told Megan that she had cash reserves between $3,000 and $4,000 to help pay for a new place. She expressed her feelings about her parents, describing them as strict but caring, and she mentioned that she did not have a passport because she'd lost it. She gave no indication she was planning on running away, nor to Megan did she seem to be suicidal as she had been before. She seemed to be out of the woods in that regard.
Her description of her parents as strict but caring, really stood out to me.
Why so?
Well, I think it sounds like she knew that they loved her.
Yeah,
and I just really feel for her parents, or any parent who has a child that has some mental health issues like this, because it would be really hard to navigate. And, even when Steve's misbehaving occasionally, I get annoyed, right?
Yeah.
And that's just, a dog like wanting outside one more time, right? And to have, like, even if you understood it was a mental health issue and that you love and care, it would, it'd be hard to navigate. It'd be hard to deal with. And they probably, my assumption is there's probably not super good resources for people who have loved ones who have these issues.
Yeah.
Right?
I remember Mom and Dad went through, Rachel, my sister, went through hell when I was going through my stuff.
Yeah.
I put them through my, whatever I was going through, put them through a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely. And my parents were the same way, strict but caring. I remember Dad saying, well, if you ever get into trouble and you end up in jail, you're on your own. And it was probably a good thing for him to say,
Absolutely.
Megan Orr said Laura was bubbly, outgoing, and amazing. She had many emotional challenges, but I understood her, she said. Sean Lerner and Laura met for dinner at a food court before she vanished. Sean gave her an iPad to search for apartments and put her in a hotel for a few nights. The last time Sean saw her was at the hotel where she was staying near Queen Street West, Roncesvalles Avenue, on June 26, 2012. One late June night, Jessica Trevors, a pastry chef, met Laura Babcock, who had just gotten out of a cab with her dog and luggage and was sitting on a park bench. Trevors introduced herself. Laura and Lacey, having nowhere to stay, were invited by Trevors to stay at her home for 4 days.
That's the kindness of strangers right there.
Jessica Trevors drove Laura back to her parents' home on June 30th, where they exchanged contact details. Later that day, Jessica called Laura to say that she had left behind some items at her apartment, which Laura promised to retrieve, but never did. Laura dropped her dog, Lacey, off at her parents' house with a shoebox containing cash. When the Babcocks returned home, they were surprised to see Lacey there, but Laura had already gone. Sean Lerner last heard from Laura in a text on July 1st, 2012, and says he filed a missing persons report with the police just days after that, as she wasn't responding to texts or phone calls. Her parents did also. After Laura disappeared, her family and friends began searching for her. Laura Babcock was described as a white female, approximately 5 feet 10 inches tall, weighing 150 pounds, and having a slender build. She had brown eyes and long hair, originally brown but dyed blonde. According to the Star newspaper, Sean Lerner found that initially police did not seriously address Laura's disappearance, viewing her as just another missing adult who might reappear. Cops were reluctant to provide resources. His revelations about her life as an escort, drug use, and recent strange behavior seemed to decrease police interest even more. Attempts to contact Sergeant Stephen Woodhouse, the lead investigator, were largely unsuccessful as Sean Lerner struggled with full voicemail inboxes and unreturned emails. Sean Lerner persisted, ultimately filing a formal complaint about the investigation with the Office of Independent Police Review Director. Seeing he was getting nowhere with the police, Sean Lerner decided to take matters into his own hands. He set up a Facebook group to gather information and draw more attention to Laura's disappearance. Sean dug in hard, looking for answers about his missing friend. Sean Lerner discovered that the final 8 calls Laura made were to Dellen Millard, which he uncovered after reviewing the phone bill Laura's mother provided. Following these calls to Dellen's number, the last one made on the evening of July 3rd, 2012, her phone had no activity.
And the police couldn't have discovered this information for themselves?
It's like I mentioned earlier in the script, Sean had to take things into his own hands and do the investigation himself because they were doing the old, well, she's a grown-up and she'll just turn up somewhere. She's probably having a good time. You know, and plus he mentioned that she had troubles, so...
It just seems like quite easy information to get.
Yep.
Like that's really not trying on the police's part.
Really not trying, yeah. Absolutely. Driven by frustration, Sean Lerner eventually reached out to Dellen Millard himself shortly after Laura vanished. Sean texted Dellen, expressing concern about Laura Babcock's disappearance and noting that Millard was the last person to have communicated with her. Initially, Millard ignored the text, but eventually responded, claiming he had heard about Laura's disappearance but did not know her whereabouts. Unconvinced by Millard's dismissive response, Lerner insisted they meet to discuss the matter further. They arranged to meet up the following day, July 27th, at a Starbucks in a bookstore west of Toronto. Upon arrival, Dellen Millard was browsing magazines and initially denied speaking to Laura Babcock before she disappeared. However, when Sean Lerner showed Dellen the phone bill, he claimed she had called him looking for drugs. Sean attempted to delve deeper, but Dellen ended the conversation abruptly, citing another commitment. Sean continued to push the police for action, trying to persuade Sergeant Woodhouse to interview Millard and to track down the iPad he'd loaned to Laura, which he gave her the last time he saw her on June 26, 2012, at the Eaton Centre's food court in downtown Toronto. Later, Woodhouse claimed in a May 2013 National Post article after Tim Bosma's murder and Millard's arrest that the original investigators were unaware of Laura Babcock's relationship with Dellen Millard and that her phone records had yet to be highlighted to them at the time. So either they were lying, saying that Sean Lerner didn't give it to them, or they'd just forgotten.
Lying or not trying.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because they weren't taking it seriously.
No.
It's so obvious.
Mm-hmm. Laura's family later stated that the police never interviewed Dellen Millard regarding their daughter's disappearance. After the detective handling the case was reassigned, they were still in the dark about the progress of the investigation. Laura's mom, Linda, expressed frustration, noting that despite the police having all the necessary information, they had not heard any developments since the case began. Laura Babcock's connection to Dellen Millard surfaced prominently after Millard's arrest in May 2013 for the disappearance and murder of Tim Bosma. The link emerged when police began a deeper investigation into Millard's background and discovered potential connections to other criminal activities as well as evidence, including Sean Lerner's iPad at properties connected to Dellen Millard. More after a quick break. And we are back. Matthew, thoughts so far?
Yeah, I didn't actually expect the part of the story here where the police really just
dropped the ball.
Didn't focus.
Yeah.
Didn't even pick up the ball, it seems.
No.
They didn't even pick it up, Mike. And,
no.
And again, it's the type of person that gets the focus, right?
Yeah.
So you have somebody who was involved in sex work, who had some mental health issues.
Very briefly, I must say, this was early on in her foray into that. And, like Sean Lerner said, he wasn't sure what she was doing, but to her friend, she was saying she was just going out with people. And the people she was going out with said that they didn't have intercourse either.
And you know me, Mike, I put no morality.
Right. Yeah.
Against that sort of thing, right? It's for me, it's it, but it's just like
the minute that the police hear drugs and sex work, they write a person off.
Oh, and sometimes mental health as well,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is just I actually haven't seen the not even pick up the ball so clearly before. Right? Before we've covered it before, but it's so clear because of this guy Sean. Good for him. He showed us how easy it was to get information, and they didn't even try.
He wasn't even her boyfriend at the time. I mean, he's just her buddy.
He's just a person that cared for her and realized somebody's got to take this up.
As we mentioned before the break, police found evidence related to Laura Babcock while searching Millard's properties regarding Tim Bosma's murder. In June 2013, Toronto homicide detective Mike Carbone told the public they were looking at Dellen Millard and Mark Smich regarding Laura Babcock's disappearance. According to cell phone data on Millard's computers, Babcock and Millard exchanged text messages on June 30th. Cell phone data showed Laura Babcock and Dellen Millard met near a subway station around 6:30 p.m. on July 3rd. On that date, Laura's cell phone records enabled her cell phone to be traced from Kipling subway station in Toronto to the area of 5 Maplegate Court, Dellen Millard's home, between 5:40 p.m. and 7:03 p.m. Both their phones were tracked to Millard's house, where Smich's phone also pinged off a nearby cell tower. He was already there. Laura's last outgoing call was to voicemail at 7:03 that same evening. Her phone has never been recovered.
Yeah, and look at that, right? Look at how much, just by starting to look at phones, look at how much information to the minute that the police are getting.
Yep.
Right? And they just stumbled on this. Right? They stumbled on this information about Laura while they're looking for somebody else.
Yep. Police in the Crown theorized that as early as May 12, 2012, Dellen Millard had been planning to kill and dispose of Laura Babcock. Over a 2-month period, with the help of Mark Smich, Millard worked on acquiring an incinerator large enough to cremate a body. Millard told Shane Schlattman, a mechanic at his airport hangar, that he needed the incinerator to start a business with his uncle, Dr. Robert Burns, a veterinarian, to cremate dead animals. He also discussed offering a mobile incineration service to other businesses. However, Dr. Burns later stated that Dellen had never discussed this business idea with him and dismissed it as absurd, especially the concept of a mobile animal incineration service.
Oh, Mike, your dad was a vet. Did he miss out on the extraordinarily lucrative concept of the mobile animal incineration service?
Yeah, I think Dad missed out on that.
Oh,
you've got written here maize.
Maize. So that's the marketing guy in me.
It's corn.
The new maize.
It's very corny. Oh boy. Yeah, Ted didn't do that.
Craziness.
Initially, Dellen Millard had Shane Schlattman try to construct a homemade incinerator, but this attempt failed, and Mark Smich was believed to have been involved in its unsuccessful testing. By June, Dellen Millard had ordered a pre-made commercial incinerator delivered to the hangar on July 5th, 2012, after being shipped on June 20th, 2012. This incinerator was branded as the Eliminator. In the meantime, Dellen Millard had been looking to buy a gun from a man named Matthew Ward Jackson, who would later plead guilty to several offenses related to the illegal sale of firearms to Dellen Millard. At the beginning of 2012, Mr. Ward Jackson and Dellen Millard knew each other and primarily communicated through text. From February to December 2012, Mr. Ward Jackson, aka Isho, used 7 phone numbers to contact Dellen Millard, including at Mr. Ward Jackson's apartment near Royal York Road and Dundas Street in West Etobicoke. On July 2, 2012, Ward Jackson sold Dellen Millard a .32 caliber Smith & Wesson, serial number B14480, and marked .32 long CTG on its barrel. Cell phone records indicated that over July 1st to 3rd, 2012, Ward Jackson and Dellen Millard texted to negotiate and finalize the sale of the revolver. Millard purchased the Smith & Wesson between 7:48 and 8:07 on July 2nd, 2012. The following day, Laura Babcock went missing.
That's pretty close to smoking gun, quite literally.
Yeah, this gun will feature prominently in next week's episode about the murder of Dellen's father, Wayne Millard.
Hey, Mike, can people who sell illegal guns be charged with some sort of manslaughter?
I don't know of any cases. I'm sure maybe a lawyer, a criminal lawyer who listens may be able to tell us. But I would think if they illegally sell a firearm to an individual, there's grounds for that person perhaps to be charged with negligent homicide.
Because that would make them maybe think twice about doing it.
Right. At 6:51 on July 3rd, while traveling from Kipling Station, presumably with Laura Babcock, Dellen Millard messaged Mark Smich, "I'll be back in 15 minutes. Don't be out front." Later at 7:33, Dellen sent another text to Mark Smich, stating he was on a, quote, mission and would return in an hour. The two men commonly used mission to refer to their illegal activities. At that moment, Laura Babcock's and Dellen Millard's phones had moved away from 5 Maplegate Court and were heading north on Highway 427. The phones returned to the vicinity of 5 Maplegate Court by 8:21 p.m. By 10:20 p.m., Christina Nudga texted Dellen Millard saying, quote, "I'll see you Friday. Have fun doing big things," end quote. Even though Laura Babcock's body was never found, prosecutors theorized that she was murdered sometime between 7:33 p.m. on July 3, 2012, and the early morning hours of July 4th. Laura's sudden and mysterious disappearance supported this theory. After July 3rd, she had no further contact with friends and family she normally kept in regular touch with. Her bank account and credit cards, active before July 3rd, showed no activity after that date. When she went missing, Laura left behind $1,000 cash and her beloved dog, Lacey. Her cell phone, which she frequently used, had no outgoing calls or messages after 7:03 p.m. on July 3rd. Laura's cell phone stopped working at around 11 a.m. on July 4th before losing the signal. Location data showed it traveling along Lakeshore Boulevard near Lake Ontario. Phone records indicated Millard's phone took the same route at the same time. Prosecutors believed Dellen Millard threw Laura Babcock's phone into Lake Ontario. On July 4th, 2012, Dellen Millard texted Mark Smich at 10 a.m. saying, "I rolled my first spliff." Later, at 2:40 p.m. that day, Millard took a photograph showing an object the size and shape of a human body wrapped in a tarp with visible grommets. When police discovered Millard's animal incinerator, the Eliminator, almost a year later during Tim Bosma's case, they found 5 grommets matching those in the tarp photo inside the ash.
He has absolutely no shame. What a scumbag. He's making jokes about it. It's a photo of her dead body wrapped in a tarp.
Yep. Not only that, it could be implied that the spliff he rolled was exactly that, because it looks kind of joint-shaped, which is awful. At 11:03, the morning Laura's phone stopped working, Dellen Millard told Mark Smich he was heading to the Waterloo area, where Dellen's farm was located. Prosecutors believed that it was then that Dellen Millard transported Laura's body to the farm. before taking the tarp photo, which showed his father's truck that was most likely used to move the body. Dellen Millard's calendar had a barn smell check entry days later on July 7th. On July 5th, the commercial Eliminator incinerator was delivered to Millard's hangar. Over the next weeks, he and Mark Smich worked to make it operational and built a trailer to make it more mobile. On July 21st, Dellen Millard told Mark Smich he had, quote, picked up the barbecue and taken it to the farm, preparing for Laura Babcock's incineration the next night. Mark Smich was instructed to come over without his girlfriend, Marlena Meneses, telling her to, quote, wait in the front while they, quote, talk to that girl, implying Laura Babcock's body. The next day, July 23rd, Millard said the barbecue was warmed up and ready for meat. Marlena Meneses later recalled being taken to the farm that night, where Millard and Smich spent 30 minutes in the barn before taking the incinerator to the hangar. She recalled seeing smoke from it later on. Internet searches were made that night about cremation temperatures. Photos show Smich posing with the incinerator and bone fragments visible inside when operational. Experts disagreed if the bones were animal or human.
Yeah, it's actually in some ways incredible that these two went so long without being caught, because they're really not that smart.
Yeah, the judge in the case alluded to that later on.
Hey, maybe they're not stupid, but maybe they have such egos, right? So it's one or the other, right?
I'm just not going to get caught.
Such egos thinking they're not going to get caught. Like, they're just, they have everything on these guys.
Yeah. The prosecution's theory was further backed up by rap lyrics written by Millard's friend, Mark Smich, an aspiring rapper. The Ashy Stone lyrics describing burning a woman's body and throwing away her phone were found on Sean Lerner's iPad that Babcock had before her disappearance. Records show that this iPad was connected to Millard's computer on the morning of July 4th and later renamed Mark's iPad. When arrested, Mark Smich had this iPad and Laura Babcock's red suitcase in his possession. Mark Smich composed the Ashy Stone rap lyrics around 12:40 a.m. on July 24, 2012, as evidenced by the file's creation timestamp on that iPad. This was within just 2 hours after the alleged cremation of Laura Babcock's body earlier that night. The timing and disturbing content of the lyrics supported the prosecution's theories that Laura Babcock's cell phone had been thrown into a lake on July 4th and that her body was cremated on July 23rd. Here's just a few of those lyrics. The bitch started off all skin and bone, now the bitch lay on some ashy stone. Last time I saw her was outside the home, and if you go swimming you can find her phone. Smich performed the lyrics for friends who later became witnesses several times in the ensuing months.
Total moral bankruptcy.
Smich and Millard wanted their trials severed so each could face justice independently. Their application was denied. The reason they were tried together appears to be that the prosecution believed they both participated in the planning and execution of Babcock's murder together, even if the evidence did not conclusively show which one of them killed her. Under Canadian law, as long as both were involved, they could both be charged with first-degree murder, regardless of who pulled the trigger. While Mark Smich opted for professional representation, Dellen Millard, not a lawyer, elected to defend himself. His first trial would be a first-degree murder charge, his own first-degree murder charge, a daunting task even for a seasoned attorney, let alone a novice and douchebag like Millard. I added douchebag, but
I love it when morons like this, who have such oversized egos, think they can represent themselves.
Yeah.
It's like the hubris of it all, right?
Yeah.
I always think it's fantastic when they do this, because it's like, you're going down, and like, I'm no dummy, and even I would never do that, right?
No. The Crown's theory for the crime's motive was that Dellen had murdered Laura out of a love triangle involving his girlfriend Christina Nudga, who was jealous of Laura Babcock's past intimate relationship with Dellen Millard. Key evidence included that July 4th photo of a tarp-wrapped object alleged to be Laura Babcock's body, Laura Babcock's borrowed iPad syncing to Millard's computer on July 4th, the Ashy Stone rap lyrics written by Mark Smich, which describe burning a woman's body, witnesses who heard Smich confess details of the crime or saw him perform the lyrics, and video of Smich with the incinerator and photos of suspected bone fragments inside it. Though Laura Babcock's body wasn't found, prosecutors argued the lyrics and her abrupt disappearance with no financial activity proved she was murdered. Neither Dellen nor Smich testified, arguing the Crown failed to prove Laura Babcock was dead or that they were involved. Sean Lerner, a good egg, Laura Babcock's former boyfriend and one of her loudest advocates for justice after she disappeared, was a key witness in the trial. He told the Crown what he knew, including his encounter with Dellen Millard at a Toronto Starbucks only weeks after Laura vanished. Sean Lerner faced Dellen Millard's cross-examination like a champ. Lerner mentioned that although it had been 5 years since he met Dellen at a coffee shop in Mississauga, he vividly remembered what he described as probably the most important meeting of his life. During their conversation, Millard aggressively questioned Lerner's memory of the meeting. "I'm trying to get at your memory, your recollection, sir. You told us you have an average memory," Millard remarked. "I've been very explicit about my memory. This was a long time ago, but this was probably the most important meeting of my life, and there are things I can remember clearly, and I remember that clearly," Lerner replied. Millard also confirmed details about their discussions during that time, including Babcock's drug use and housing issues. Their earlier interaction at Babcock's birthday and subsequent visit to Millard's condo left Lerner with a negative impression, as Millard had supplied the drugs at the event. Throughout the questioning, Dellen Millard probed Sean Lerner about his opinions, prompting Justice Michael Code to clarify that personal opinions were irrelevant to the proceedings. During his cross-examination, Millard inquired, "Sean, you don't like me very much, do you?" To which Sean Lerner replied, "No." Dellen Millard continued, "Do you find me sketchy?" And Sean Lerner affirmed, "Yes." Although both Millard and Smich were already serving life sentences for the murder of Tim Bosma, details from the Bosma case were excluded from this trial to preserve its integrity. Jurors were screened for prior knowledge of the accused's past convictions. Some jurors were aware of the Bosma case, where additionally, pending charges against Millard for the alleged murder of his father were kept out of the Babcock trial. Regardless of what they didn't hear, the jury found both men guilty of the first-degree murder of Laura Babcock. From the Star newspaper, quote, "For Babcock's parents, though, the verdict brought little joy. The loss of Laura is no less painful today than when it was realized 5 years ago," said Clayton Babcock, Laura's father. "Like any parent that loses a child, we can only move forward with thoughts of what might have been. You all know what a wonderful woman she was, as well as all the pains and struggles she faced," Babcock said of his daughter. "You also know about the evil beings that took her life, and if society's lucky, we will not see them again in the streets," he said, struggling to hold back tears as he spoke to the media outside the Toronto courthouse, with Linda Babcock, Laura's mother, at his side, a hand resting on his shoulder. End quote.
Yeah, it would be hard to feel joy in any way, Mike. Right? I'm sure they were pleased, but
yeah,
within the context,
Laura's no less dead.
I know. Within the context of that, it's
horrible. Millard and Smich were both sentenced to life in prison with a 25-year parole ineligibility period to be served consecutively with the sentence already imposed for Tim Bosma's murder. Thus, they would have to serve a minimum of 50 years before being eligible for parole. In 2019, Linda and Clayton Babcock received an official death certificate for their daughter, Laura, 7 years after Millard and Smich killed her and burned her body in an animal incinerator, and almost 2 years after their conviction. As her body had never been found, this led to complications in declaring her legally dead. The issue was resolved when Ontario Premier Doug Ford personally delivered the death certificate. The Babcock family's ordeal led to an amendment in the Vital Statistics Act, now known as Laura's Law, which allows courts to declare a person dead under certain perilous circumstances in Ontario. This change was sparked by the family's frustration, including when they received a voter registration card for Laura posthumously, prompting Linda Babcock to contact Doug Ford for assistance. The family experienced mixed emotions upon receiving the certificate, feeling both the resurgence of their grief and a sense of security that it could prevent any legal loopholes in the ongoing appeals of those convicted. Now convicted of a pair of murders, Dellen Millard would face justice again, this time alone, for yet another murder, that of his father, Wayne Millard. In the final installment of this 3-part series, we'll learn more about yet another terrible crime committed by Dellen Millard. And that's it for Dark Poutine episode 318, Shadows of Deception Part 2, The Murder of Laura Babcock.
Wow.
Just one more on this troll.
You and I both had nightmares about murders last night.
Yeah, we did. Yep.
It's because we've been recording some pretty heavy ones, I think, in some ways, right?
Yeah, this one's in my head. I don't know why, particularly. Maybe it's because it's a multi-parter and we're immersed in it more so. But yeah, I barely slept last night. I was dreaming about horrible things.
Yeah,
horrible things.
Me too. And I woke up thinking about Tim Bosma.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was dreaming about Laura Babcock. So
that's weird.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get on to voicemails because that'll be a little lighter, I think.
Yes.
That's right. It's time for voicemails. You can leave us a message at 1-877-327-5786 or 1-877-DARK-PTN. We'd love to hear from you. Let's see who called us this week.
Alrighty, let's listen to our first voicemail while Matthew makes obscene gestures.
Hey, Mike and Matthew. This is Mason from Kilbride calling again. Just wanted to say great job on the last podcast there about Barbara Stoppel. It was pretty interesting, and always nice to hear different stories about Winnipeg and stuff too. I've spent a bit of time up there and in the Manitoba province, so be pretty interested in those stories as well. I just wanted to call about one more story there, suggestion. It's about the last man who was hung in St. John's, Newfoundland, Herbert A. Spratt, and he was served in the war and come back with PTSD, and he actually bludgeoned, was my grandfather's first cousin, Josephine O'Brien, from a town in Cape Royal. He bludgeoned her to death on St. Patrick's Day. And anyways, it was an interesting story, and it'd be good if you guys covered it, and I think you found it very interesting. I don't know if you heard much about it before, but anyways, it'd be cool to hear it, and I always like to hear stuff about Newfoundland. So anyways, thanks again, and great job on the podcast. Have a good day.
Thank you. What I'd like you to do, if you could, is email us at darkpoutinepodcast@gmail.com and just give me the information in writing, and I'll start looking into that one for sure.
Yeah, it sounds interesting.
It does sound interesting.
And Mike and I, we try to cover all the provinces.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? And
yep.
Sometimes when there's smaller populations, it's harder to find information.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, send us as much as you can if you wouldn't mind. That would be fantastic. And you mentioned the Barbara Stoppel case. I got an email from Thomas Soffenow about the podcast, and he commended us and how we treated Barb's story.
Oh,
so
great.
Yeah, I mean, here's this guy who, he said he wanted to clarify some things. During the Mr. Big Sting, when the Saskatchewan RCMP were targeting Terry Arnold, along with his confession of the murder, he also said that he murdered a girl in a donut shop in Winnipeg. Oh. So there you go. That I didn't have in the show.
Okay.
He added that there was a guy in prison for that murder.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's referring to Thomas in that regard.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and Thomas goes on to thank Andrew Mikolajewski, who wrote the book and was also a Winnipeg police officer, and his partner, Bob Legg. He says that they were instrumental in his exoneration.
That's wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and Thomas went on to say, tunnel vision is believing one person without asking the other. So there you go.
Yes.
So thanks for emailing, Thomas. Wow. I really appreciate that.
That's incredible.
Yeah. All righty. Let's listen to another voicemail, Matthew.
Hey, Mike and Matt. It's Tracy Sands from Shelburne, Nova Scotia. Just heard my shout out. Just wanted to tell you that you were fairly close there, Matthew. I do run a shop, but it's a bookstore called Shorebound Books, and you guys are always welcome here should you make it over to the right coast. But I do happen to sell loose tea as well as coffee and a lot of other artisan type things here. So maybe I'll have a high tea day in the shop just to see who likes it. Just wanted to also note that in the episode I listened to, you talked about Mr. Big Stings, and I was curious to know more about that, and I've been reading up on it because I know that it was used in that case and in the Carissa Boudreau case, and I seem to recall a couple in Ontario, and wondered if you guys would consider doing an episode specifically on Mr. Big Stings across Canada and which ones worked and which ones didn't. Anyways, that's my suggestion. I hope you have a great day. Bye.
I think that's a great suggestion, and I'm going to look into that. My friend Alan R. Warren wrote a book on Mr. Big Stings and a lot of the problems around them. So,
did he? Okay.
Yes, he did. So maybe it's time to have Alan come on and have a conversation with us about Mr. Big Stings, because I think that would be something.
You know how absolutely frustrated I get with them.
Yes, you do.
And it'd be interesting to speak to him to hear. It's one of these things where it's like, yes, a lot of people have been caught, but they're so dangerous. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, let's.
I want to have a debate about it.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll start putting that together. I mean, it'll be down the road a bit. But yeah, I think it would be interesting.
You mean you can't write it by tomorrow, Mike?
No.
Research takes a while.
It does.
Yeah.
This one in particular, these 3 episodes that we're working on right now, I've been researching almost since the beginning of the show because it's one of those ones, you know.
It's one of those big spectacle stories that was in the news everywhere from what I was told, yeah.
All righty. Well, let's move on, and I will visit your bookstore the next time I'm home. If I get down to Shelburne, I am coming in there, and you're gonna have to tolerate my face.
I will too, as long as she has at least every bookstore in Canada, in my humble opinion, should have at least one Alice Munro book.
Alice Munro, yeah, I agree.
Alice Munro is the best.
All right, let's move on to our third voicemail.
Gentlemen, Janelle in Southern Alberta here. I just listened to episode 315. Thank you for covering another Manitoba case. I love to hear you cover stories from the province I was born and raised in. You put so much time and effort into the stories you cover, and there are so many names and place names to get right, which is tough when you didn't grow up in the place. So please take my next comments as constructive criticism. I learned about the case of Thomas Sofino when I was in high school. Shout out to one of my favorite teachers, Mr. Ritchie. And I'm going to date myself here, but I learned about Sofino's wrongful conviction when he was exonerated. And while I could be wrong, we say Sofino when we talk about this case. Maybe it's a Manitoba thing? Also, Pembina Highway. My little Manitoba heart dropped and giggled at the same time. We don't even really pronounce the B, and we say Pembina Highway. So a little mini lesson on Manitoban pronunciations for you today. Again, thanks so much for covering another Manitoba story. I always appreciate hearing you cover them.
Yeah, well, Yeah, there's a lot of podcasts that will cover a Nova Scotia case, and they have to say words like Musquodoboit and Tatamagouche. So
I was corrected the first time I was in Winnipeg when I pronounced it Portage and Maine.
Portage.
They're like, it's Portage in Maine.
It's Portage in Maine.
I'm like, actually, it's Portage.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't mind those corrections, especially if they're given in such a nice way.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're like, well, you get it wrong. Like, I don't give a shit.
But it was lovely. Yeah. And shout out to your Mr. Ritchie. Was that his name? The teacher?
Yes.
Who was your favorite teacher?
Well, I had a lot of favorite teachers, actually. I didn't have any that, like, this is the teacher kind of thing. Mr. Derrick was great. His daughter, Anne, actually is now on the Nova Scotia Supreme Court. Wow. He was great. Mr. Penny was great. Anne Stockdale, my other English teacher, she was great. Most recently, who someone's been on my mind, is Sandra Bergeron, my French teacher. Throughout high school, she just passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, she had cancer, sadly. But she's the one who took us. She was also my running coach, and she's the one who helped to take the school students to Paris. So she really had a big heart, and she tolerated a lot of nonsense on that trip.
She tolerated you in Paris?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, you owe her big time, man.
Yeah. Yeah, and, she was a very, very kind person.
You told me the shenanigans you got up to.
But yes, I did. I got a lot of shenanigans. Anyway. That's it for this week's voicemails. Again, you can leave us one at 1-877-327-5786 or 1-877-DARK-PTN. We'd love to hear from you, even if it is just to say hi and to tell us to go shit in our hats. If you're stumped for what to chat with us about, a quick story is welcome. We don't have any new patrons or donut money donors this week, but you know what? You're all still good eggs anyway. I'm sure there's some next week. Truth be told, we've already recorded next week's, and we know there is. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you in advance. Thanks to all our patrons and donut money donors, past and present, for your generosity. It helps to keep the show going. You can become a patron of Dark Poutine at patreon.com/darkpoutine. For a one-time donation, you can send us donut money via PayPal using our email address, darkpoutinepodcast@gmail.com. If you don't already subscribe to the show, it would mean a lot if you did. You can easily find Dark Poutine on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. If you haven't gotten yours yet, my book, Murder, Madness, and Mayhem, is available to order via a link on the Dark Poutine website. And speaking of darkpoutine.com, please check it out for show notes and other cool stuff. We'd appreciate it if you took the time to give Dark Poutine a like or a follow on Facebook and Instagram. Most importantly, thank you for listening, and tell your friends about us. Word of mouth is a powerful thing. Alrighty, and that is it for this episode of Dark Poutine. So until next time, you know what to do. Don't forget to be a good egg and not a bad apple.
Don't be a bad yapple.
Yeah, right.